a lot of people struggle with taking that first step.
I mean, this might be helpful for people listening, but if I'm processing this stuff just myself or between my wife and I, we can get let's plan this thing out for 6 months. We'll set a date, 6 months away, we'll launch the podcast, we'll launch a business, everything in between happens. But having you there to say, why don't we launch it in a month?
With the Good Grief one, you launched the podcast at the start of your business as well.
Yeah, the whole thing from scratch on that 1st of October.
And I think it's a great encouragement to people out there who have been running a business for a long time, working away in their sort of specific industry. Their hesitation is like, oh, maybe I don't know, but you're someone who launched their business with a podcast. So you'd like to think a little bit easier for people who
100%.
already run any sort of business. Welcome to Beyond the Mic, the very first episode. My name is Jethro Staggs, and I'm excited to be with you guys today. This podcast is all about podcasting, content creation, going beyond just talking into the microphone, into the whole world of what is involved in podcasts themselves. And today, I am joined by my best friend, mentor, the guy who gave me my first videography job, karaoke partner, soon-to-be dad, and the host of the Good Grief podcast, Mr. Ryan Bowles.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me. That was probably my favorite introduction I've ever had. So I appreciate it, brother.
Dude, I'm honored to have you here today. When we were talking about launching this podcast, when I came to you with the idea, there was only one person I had in mind on who could co-host this new podcast with me.
And they couldn't make it today. So
and so Ryan is here in the flesh instead. Anyway, it was Ryan from the very beginning. But this first episode, we're going to be talking about overcoming the fear of launching a podcast. This is the very first episode.
It's big.
Yeah, it's very big. You've just launched your own podcast about a month ago.
Totally.
Yeah.
And not the first podcast I've launched.
Yes,
so lots of lessons there.
So Ryan and I met back in 2018. I was his little video intern, pretty much the D-Rock to Gary V over here. And Ryan had a podcast at the time. Why don't you tell us about your podcast you originally had?
Yeah, it was called Navigating the Hustle.
Yeah.
I'm still proud of the name of the podcast.
It's a good name.
Probably because one of my followers and supporters gave me the name. We put it out there. But it was just about navigating all of the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of business and everything in between. And so it ran into the 50s of episodes.
I think it's 56 or 50.
Okay.
I was looking at it this week. Yeah, I did some research this week just to remember.
Yeah, and it was super casual. It was poor quality.
It was on a lapel mic,
lapel mic, or even just from my
sometimes?
phone. Yeah, most of the time driving.
Yeah.
Even interviews in the car.
Yeah.
And so, that 2018 feels like a lifetime ago. But people listened.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say 2018 was like hyper podcast aware.
Not yet. Yeah.
Yeah, compared to what it is now. So, which I guess is why you're starting the show and why it's perfect time for people to be thinking podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. Podcasting, it's continuing to grow, especially since COVID. And the exciting thing that we're seeing at the moment is that a lot of people launched a podcast during COVID, but where are those podcasts today?
It's crazy.
They're nowhere to be found. I'm pretty sure recent stat I saw was that there's about 4.5 million podcasts, and I think only 700,000 of them have over 10 episodes, and I think it's around 200,000 or 300,000 have posted in the last 90 days.
All those stats that you shot through to me via text blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, from my competitive nature, I'm like, just from that standpoint alone, I need more than 10 episodes.
Yeah, just make sure you get to
More than
11.
10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you at least hit 56 the first time. I didn't do that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you had a podcast as well.
I did. It was called the Table Principle. Came out in 2019, and so I launched episode 1 in week 1. Episode 2 in week 2.
So you're doing good at this point.
I was doing good, although I was recording them one at a time. We'll get into that in a future episode. And then episode 3 was a month later.
Right.
And
what about episode 4?
Yeah, we're still waiting to hear. Maybe I'll do a special episode of the Table Principle.
But I think that's interesting because, you knew at the time how powerful podcasts were.
Yep.
Being in the space, working with myself and my podcast. And so you got it out there. You took the first step. Which is kudos to you.
Yeah.
But that's what most people get to.
Yeah.
And then the wheels sort of fall off. So maybe we can open some of those rabbit holes today.
Yeah, that would be really good. So obviously a lot of people struggle with taking that first step. You know, even getting to us being here to set up the recording this afternoon was, you know, it took some time. It took some process to get there. I remember when we were launching your podcast as well, I was pretty on your back about it. And I even remember we had this, we had a Zoom call one time. We were just jamming out on some ideas. And I was like to Ryan, so when's the date of launch?
And I had no idea. So I did not have an answer for that.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, well, let's open up our calendars right now. And I'm pretty sure we picked a month in advance. And we're like, what? The 1st of October sounds great. And yeah.
Which, funnily enough, happened to be, I believe, the day after National or International Podcast Day.
Yeah, International Podcast was the Saturday.
End of September.
Yeah, you guys launched it on the Sunday.
So it's kind of cool timing.
Yeah, very cool timing.
But I needed that to bounce that idea back and forth. I think this might be helpful for people listening, but if I'm processing this stuff just myself or between my wife and I, we can get let's plan this thing out for 6 months and let's set a date 6 months away. We'll launch the podcast, we'll launch a business, and then, you know, everything in between happens. But having you there to say, why don't we launch it in a month?
Yep.
That felt like plenty of time still.
Yeah.
But we had to get ourselves moving.
Yeah, and that month came up pretty quickly.
Came up super quick.
Yeah, that's what we're messaging every week, being like, all right, I kept messaging Ryan, being like, what's holding you back this week? You know, what's
the plan?
Yeah, what's the plan? I know gear was some of the restrictions and hesitations in the first place, and I reckon we'll talk about that in a few episodes' time. I know a lot of people asking me, what gear do I need to start a podcast? And so we'll dedicate a whole episode into talking about gear from entry level to higher professional. But yeah, you needed that, to start.
Yeah, and so if that's maybe an area, one of the hesitations was gear.
Yeah.
One was know-how.
Yeah.
Even though I'd run a podcast before, I wanted this one to be a higher level.
Yep.
And then I guess all of the little things, the softwares and the pieces around me were holding us back from starting. So grateful to have you on our side.
I appreciate that. It's been good to be able to start my own podcast because I know how to.
Congratulations! Let me be the first to congratulate you.
Thank you very much. This is a really exciting journey. But even with me setting a date for Ryan and I were messaging this week, and he knows that I wanted to launch this podcast before the end of the year, and we're looking at maybe a recording date together in November. And then I think on Wednesday, I get a text from him being like, hey, I'm actually free Friday afternoon. Let's do it then. Surely that's not soon enough.
Which I think was 3 days, 4 days.
Yeah. I think, 3 days. And so I, just had to scramble over the next 3 days to make sure everything was ready. But here we are today and couldn't be more excited. So
and ready to go.
Yeah. So I think with people who are maybe fearful about launching a podcast, picking a date is probably the number one thing you need to do. Setting yourself a goal, and not just setting that for yourself, but having other people who can keep you accountable to it.
Yeah, and so once either you pick a date or bounce that idea of somebody that can hold you accountable, tell people about that thing.
Yes.
Whether that's your customers, your audience, family or friends, or just your neighbor, tell people because they will help hold you accountable to that thing.
Absolutely. And there's many statistics around like even setting goals, telling people around them, you're more likely to achieve a goal if you tell the people around you. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, this week on our StoryRocket social media, we've been posting up reels, asking you for questions, topics that you want to hear, which will come in future episodes. Even today, I was letting everyone know that we were filming this afternoon. So to send through questions.
And it's cool to see questions coming through.
Yeah, it's been awesome. We've had questions around, gear is probably one of the biggest ones. How to grow TikTok and Instagram following, how to be, people who are knowledgeable but not actually sure how to then, display that in the format present that in a podcast. So there's some really exciting topics and really exciting things that are going to be coming up on this podcast. So first one, picking a date, I think is a really big one. Another one is like if you're already, running a business, you know what to do. You know how to help people.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
If you're running a business, hopefully you know what to do.
Yeah, and you don't. So there's lots of people out there that have launched podcasts after already doing something for 5, 10, 20 years already. You were a little bit different in launching. Obviously, you've been in business for forever.
15 years or so.
You already had a podcast about business, but with the Good Grief one, you launched the podcast at the start of your business as well.
Yeah, the whole thing from scratch on that 1st of October. So we launched socials a month prior, and we started from zero, Instagram, Facebook, all of those, email list, etc., with the goal in mind that in 4 weeks' time, we were launching the podcast on that date. So we had a very short runway to let as many people know that we had a podcast coming. And that was people all around the world on socials, but then also close friends and family and
Yep.
people that we're connected with as well. So
Yeah.
there was a whole lot that went into that to
Yep.
get it off the ground. And we had to do it, you only have kind of one chance to
You only got one shot.
launch that podcast from
Yeah.
episode 1. And so a lot of effort went into that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's a great encouragement to people out there who have been running a business for a long time, have been, working away in their sort of specific industry, and then being able to, their hesitation is like, oh, maybe I don't know. But you're someone who launched their business with a podcast. So it should be, you'd like to think, a little bit easier for people who
100%.
already already run a coaching business, any sort of business. you know?
Physical, retail, online, e-commerce, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you've got a business, you've got customers, you've been putting in the runs, you know the stuff.
Yeah.
But having someone like Jethro, I'm going to shamelessly plug you,
Yeah.
having someone like Jethro and StoryRocket to pull those ideas out of you and put that into a plan makes the world of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, so first up, setting a date, which we already talked about, super important. Already, if you already have a business, it's a lot easier because you're used to talking about that sort of industry, that sort of topic, absolutely, which is cool. That's why, launching a podcast about podcasts has been kind of easy for me because I help people launch their own podcast.
You talk about it all day.
Yeah, I talk about it all day.
And the statistic you just shared with me earlier about Australia, US,
Yeah.
in terms of podcast listeners.
Yeah, so now Australia has surpassed America in the highest per capita listenership.
crazy.
So 33% of our country listens to podcasts, not monthly, but weekly.
And so that is an encouragement.
Absolutely.
And then if you follow that track further, the amount of people that listen to a podcast and then purchase from the person that they listen to is extremely high.
Yeah, I think it's about 60% people are 60% more likely to be able to purchase a product or a service that they've heard about on a podcast. So in my mind, all roads are leading to podcasts. It's just a matter of pick a date.
Totally.
When.
Yeah.
So
Love that.
yeah, I think it's really exciting time, exciting time to jump into this medium. I think it's a very cool medium. It's got so many nuances and so many things that go beyond the mic than just pressing record. And we're gonna unpack that more in future episodes. So if there's one thing you could take away from this episode, it would be pick a date. Pick a date and start. And if we can help with any of that, it would be absolutely amazing. But yeah, tell someone about it, write that date down, and just get started. But I think that's all for today. We're trying to keep these episodes a bit short, a bit more practical. It's been a lot of fun. First episode of Beyond the Mic.
We should do it again.
We should definitely do it again. So awesome. If you loved this episode, make sure to share it with someone. If you found it valuable, found it insightful, find someone that you can share this episode with, and make sure to check the description for any links and show notes for more resources on how you can start your own podcasts. But that's all for today. I'm Ryan.
I'm Ryan. This is Jethro signing out.
And we will see you on the next episode.
Ciao.